So New Jersey contracts, New Jersey Forms 101, New Jersey has a ton of forms, so it's really hard to get everything into an hour. So I thought we would just do a high level on the contract of sale, because that's probably what you guys are dealing with the most. I'll give you some tips and tricks. And then the office has my contact information, so if you guys have any questions afterwards, I'm more than available to help in any way I can. Because again, a lot of stuff is gonna be situational. So when you guys look at the contract of sale, if you remember from school way back in the day, page 1 is opinion 26. If you ever have an older listing agent who says, hey, make sure you send me opinion 26, because sometimes this may just come up. Technically, it's page 2. Opinion 26 is the top page, because that basically top to bottom starts, because the contract of sale, you pretty much say your agency with somebody at least 3 times within this contract. This is the first one as to who's filling it out and who they're representing across the top. And then it talks about the right to an attorney. Okay, so again, North Jersey, pretty much 100% attorneys. Central Jersey, pretty much 50-50 if agents are using an attorney or not. South Jersey pretty much operates like PA. It's just agents entitled talking to each other. There's really not a ton of attorneys involved. So keeping in mind, which is one of the hiccups you need to be concerned about when it comes to the contract of sale, the first thing in the attorney review letters that come out, New Jersey has attorney review. So once the contracts are fully executed and signed, the next business day starts attorney review. So one of the tips and tricks in terms of you guys trying to write contracts, if you write a contract on a Friday, even if they sign it, all parties, attorney review doesn't start till Monday, which means either party can cancel the contract for no reason during attorney review. So you would be rolling through the weekend with a listing agent having your contract, potentially using it to negotiate something else, and you are not locked in like you are in PA, where once you sign it, it's done. So there can still be open houses, there can still be showings, there can still be additional contracts that come in. Even if it's a highest and best, they can still do around 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So sometimes keep in mind when you guys are writing the contracts, and this is my personal opinion as an agent and for my office, if it looks like you're gonna write a contract, write it, send it on Sunday. Don't give them the ability to use your contract as a negotiating point against either a dual agency situation where somebody's coming into them directly, or they can use it for anybody else. Because even if they accept it right away, you're not starting your attorney review until Monday. So you might as well get everything done, get your paperwork in place, make sure everything is docu-signed and e-signed and all that stuff. Package your cover letter, put it together, and then at like 5 o'clock on Sunday, send it over and put a PS, please confirm we got this. So if they do agree and sign it, you're starting attorney review first thing on Monday. There's nobody potentially, because we're people, there's nobody potentially or maliciously using your contract and your terms as a negotiating point for somebody else. Keep in mind, in New Jersey, if you guys have seen in August, it was the Consumer Protection Act went into place, so that created designated agency within New Jersey, just like you have designated agency within PA. Works exactly the same way. You guys need to keep in mind for your paperwork, New Jersey has additional forms because we're the state that they sued for hot coffee and they won. So if you have a designated agency or a dual agency situation within New Jersey, there's an additional form on top of the CIS called the informed consent to dual agency, seller in parentheses or buyer in parentheses, informed consent to dual agency, to designated agency, buyer or seller. They have the same type of forms on the landlord tenant side. So you have to double up. If you're in a dual agency situation or a designated agency, they need to be signed as well. And it's mentioned in the contract of sale and other forms like your agency forms, which I'm going to review at 1 o'clock as well, that these are additional forms you need to get so everybody is aware what it means and they can't come back afterwards and say that they didn't know. Trend-wise, what we're seeing across the board in New Jersey and especially central New Jersey, a lot of buyers are going directly to the listing agent. May not be a dual agency situation. They are perfectly fine going unrepresented, so they don't have to pay a commission to the buyer's agent, or they think if there's co-op compensation, they can use it as a negotiating point to drop the purchase price or do something with the listing agent. So just keep in mind, again, the Consumer Protection Act for New Jersey, that is now a law, makes sellers' disclosures mandatory by law, so they're supposed to be completed, signed off on by the seller and the agents. to the best of your ability. You're not expected to be an inspector, but you are supposed to review and sign. One of the biggest lawsuits that's been occurring in New Jersey is remediation needs to be disclosed. So even if your basement flooded 10 years ago and it was remediated and there has not been an issue since, you still need to disclose that it flooded 10 years ago, but it's been remediated, no issue since. That's been coming up in terms of lawsuits in New Jersey. So seller's disclosure is mandatory. Hey, agency documents are mandatory. So keep in mind the way the law is written doesn't have to be exclusive buyer's agency. Could be non-exclusive buyer's agency. Could be a relationship if your brokerage puts together a form as a transaction broker. That creates agency to allow the home to be shown. Now, for my office, exclusive buyer's agency is the mandatory form that we push, because why would you guys working so hard go out there and show a property to somebody without the guarantee that you've got a document with teeth in it that you can go back and say, hey, can't go around my back, you owe me the commission, don't go play games. So in my office, exclusive buyer's agency, exclusive tenant agency is mandatory before you go out and show a home. Okay? So again, this talks about who's writing it. The reason I say that is because depending on your role, you could be filling this out on behalf of the seller, not the buyer. You could be filling it out on behalf of the buyer, not the seller. Both the seller and buyer, which is dual agency, or neither, which would be a transaction broker situation. You said, well, where does a transaction broker situation come in? Could be like a FSBO. Could be you don't have an exclusive agency with the buyer and you find a FSBO. You're still working a commission within the contract, but you don't owe a fiduciary responsibility to either party. So keep that in mind when you're writing this. It's not just who am I representing, who do I owe a fiduciary responsibility to, who am I legally obligated to. The biggest hiccup New Jersey had for the longest time was we thought dual agency had to happen if you were representing both sides. But you really weren't representing both sides. You had no agency agreement with the buyer. The buyer came to your open house, you wrote it as dual so you could get the full commission, not knowing that you created a fiduciary responsibility that made you legally liable to them, not just for that transaction, but for 6 years afterwards. Just because you clicked the box, potentially the wrong way. So again, looking at boxes, make sure that you're clicking it, and whatever you're clicking here, you have like the CIS, which is just an acknowledgement, or the informed consents that create the agency, to make sure that whatever you're clicking here, you're covered. So again, goes through everybody's allowed to have attorney review. You come down here, buyer sign, selling broker, listing broker. Again, you guys are the agents, so you're signing on behalf of the broker. Keep in mind, see where it says prepared by name of real estate licensee. So even in an admin position, technically for New Jersey, an admin can fill this out without a license, but it's supposed to be the agent's name going here, and that agent is supposed to review it before it goes out to the seller or go out to the buyer to be reviewed, because it's the agent's license that's on the line if it's filled out incorrectly. Okay, so again, yes?
It's strange that they have listing broker and selling broker, because I'm not technically a broker.
So technically, you guys, so you're writing on behalf of the broker.
Got it.
So the way New Jersey sees it is you guys as licensed agents are working under the umbrella of the broker who's holding your license. So you're actually filling this out on their behalf, not for you specifically. You're in there to make sure there's a paper trail as to who gets paid. But ultimately, if it were to go to the real estate commission or something like that, it's not just you there, it's your broker with you. So that's why they put the broker, because technically they're the ones who are supposed to be also reviewing everything, believe it or not. As a broker, per New Jersey, I'm supposed to be reviewing every email that goes out from every agent under me, every text message, every marketing, every postcard. Somehow I'm supposed to, by osmosis, like the Wizard of Oz, know everything that everybody's doing from 12:01 midnight until 11:59 the next night. It doesn't make sense, but that's where they do. Also keep in mind, a lot of this paperwork, though it's been updated, some of it's still from like 100 years ago. They just did small revisions and changes, but the core of it is from way back when a lot of stuff isn't even in place. So again, then you roll into your contract of sale, who the parties are, the buyers, the sellers. You guys are still using Bright. So when you go to public records, whoever's in public records should be on here for the seller. If it's a business or an LLC, that's fine, because then title's gonna make sure that that person is signing on their behalf, but you wanna make sure those numbers match. For example, especially coming out of COVID, you got two people on public records, then two people should be signing as the seller. Unless there's a divorce situation where it can be proved, you don't want to get to the closing table and find out that somebody tried to sell a property behind their soon-to-be ex's back, and that ex didn't want to lose the house, and now they're kiboshing the whole deal, because technically they didn't sign from the beginning, and all the paperwork is null and void. So just double check public records, same thing, legal names with your buyers, make sure the legal names are there, whoever is purchasing is gonna be on here, it should at least match the pre-approval and the pre-quote. You find all those in public records, your map, your block, your lot. So this is one of the tricks I usually tell people. So again, sometimes in the contract of sale, when they need an initial deposit and additional deposit, that's your escrow. That's not your total down payment. That's your earnest money deposit is what they're talking about. Technically, by law, if you do an initial deposit, whether you're out of attorney review or not, or under contract, you're supposed to collect that escrow deposit within like 10 days of the contract being created, not signed by all parties. So one of the tips I like to use, especially in this current climate where you have a lot of multi-bid situations, you could be putting in multiple offers, I always put it under additional deposit. I'll put whatever the escrow amount is, say $5,000. I don't fill out anything here for A. And on B, where it says on or before, even though it says date, you can write in. So I'll put 3 days after the end of attorney review. So that way, I'm not legally liable to collect that escrow deposit from my buyer. It's not being held by a title company or an attorney where I have to get it back unless the seller accepts the contract and we get out of attorney review. And then I have 3 days from the end of attorney review to get that check and deliver it to the title company. Okay, most of the time in New Jersey, which is a little different than like this side, the title company or the attorney holds the escrow. The listing office usually does not hold it. In New Jersey, we don't like holding escrow if we don't have to. We hold it for PA, but we don't like holding it for New Jersey. So usually it's the title company that's chosen, or the attorney is the one who holds the escrow deposit. So on the next line here, where who holds the escrow, I'll always just put buyer's attorney or title company. Because at this point in time, they may not have chosen an attorney or a title company yet. So I don't want to put somebody specifically here if I don't have to, unless we've had that conversation. So again, that 3-day deal protects you where you're not running around all over creation, picking up a check to find out as soon as you deliver that check that they're not accepting your contract. And now you've got to get the title company or the attorney to give you back a certified check that could take days, which might stop you, especially in a first-time homebuyer situation, from being able to put another offer in because they don't have the liquid funds to have multiple escrows in the wind. Okay? So that's a tip. Again, performance, you put it here. This is way different than PA. We don't do the rates. We just put whatever the mortgage amount is they're asking for. We put the type of VA, FHA, Section 203Ks, usually an FHA construction loan, if that's an option they're using. Conventional, most of the time for other, if you have a cash deal or like a hard money loan, you would mark the other and write it in there. Another tip that I like to use especially, and this is kind of more psychological. So you see here, this is your mortgage commitment date, this line. The next line down is your closing date. So I'll usually pick the closing date, and then I'll put the mortgage commitment date 7 days before. I'll put it the week before. I want my buyer to have as much time as possible to create an emotional connection between them and the seller. They should be through appraisal by the mortgage commitment date. They should be through inspections. They should be through the township inspection. They should be through most of it. That if I get to the mortgage commitment date and there's an issue where I need an extension, those sellers have already started packing their boxes. They probably hired a moving truck. It's more likely they're going to allow an extension than if I put the mortgage commitment date 2 weeks after we get out of attorney review, when they've got 7 pages that have to be checked off on, and that seller hasn't even started packing anything yet. At that circumstance, they're probably gonna be like, forget it, we'll go to our backup. When you're 7 days from closing, they are more likely to give you a 5 to 10 day extension because it's gonna cost them more to cancel stuff and put stuff back on the market. So I'll look at the calendar, I'll figure it in. The other thing too, because again, we have attorney review, all the dates start from the end of attorney review. So if you're gonna write like a 30-day close, when you're looking at your calendar, assume it's gonna take a day or 2 to get them to accept the offer, and another 3 days for attorney review. Put your 30 days from like 5 days in the future. So you're really writing like a 35-day contract. So your buyer gets the full 30 days from the end of attorney review, not like 25. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind, which is very frustrating in New Jersey, So attorney review is technically 3 business days if there are no attorneys involved. The minute an attorney sends out that first attorney review letter, whether it's seller attorney or buyer attorney, you enter purgatory. It becomes limbo. That attorney review period freezes in time, and now attorney review could be 2 hours if everybody signs off, or 2 months, or 2 years. So you gotta watch that. A lot of the times we as agents, we're the grease when it comes to the attorneys and title because they like to send out their letters and their legal jargon. And we gotta be the ones in the background saying, hey, I got stuff to schedule. Like we need to get through this as quickly as possible. So keep that in mind when you guys are working New Jersey deals. That attorney review period could slow everything down because you don't wanna be scheduling stuff if there's the potential that it could be canceled. At the same time, if you're the buyer's agent, you want to try to push through attorney review as quickly as possible, as long as your clients are protected, because every minute that ticks by, another offer could come in and knock you out. Even if you've been fully negotiated, they could be negotiating another offer without you knowing it, come in, and you're done. And all you do is get a cancellation letter saying, hey, we really appreciate it, or you get a letter where they say, hey, we got another offer, if you want us to stay with you, we need you to come up to this. And now you're renegotiating during attorney review everything that's going on. So again, as a buyer's agent, you want to try to push that as quickly as possible. Some of the things to watch out for in attorney review in general when it comes to their letters is, one, again, you want to get out. It's limbo. Every attorney always removes time of essence, which is part of the contract. It's part of the standard contract that you guys are used to. Every attorney removes that during attorney review. You also want to watch out, especially if your buyers have given up any sort of home inspections or anything along those lines. Most sellers' attorneys will always remove in the contract of sale, it has that block for the certificate of occupancy that if you leave it blank, it's 1.5% of the purchase price the seller's responsible for. Most sellers' attorneys remove that and it's like $200, $300, $500. So as a buyer's agent, since New Jersey, every township is different as to what they're looking for. You want to be aware of that because if you were using that as some sort of a security net because your buyer gave up their home inspection, if they suddenly drop it down to $200, they may be caught in a situation. Okay, so again, double check the townships you're working in. For example, Hamilton does it top to bottom. They check everything, electric, plumbing, permits, everything. Lawrence Township has 3 pages of small print of what they check. West Windsor, which has some of the highest taxes in the area, just has a smoke cert. They're just checking for smoke detectors, CO2, and a fire extinguisher, and even every township now isn't checking for fire extinguishers. You could literally walk into a house in West Windsor down to the studs, and as long as it has smoke detectors and CO2, they're gonna pass it. So you guys want to do your research to make sure that, especially if you're negotiating in the current climate where you may have somebody giving stuff up, or they're only doing it for information only or major defects, what is the township actually looking for to make sure you're protected? Okay, does anybody here work with investors? Okay, so mandatory now, and every township has to have it. So in terms of investors, for a regular resale, lead paint disclosure should be done. Lead paint inspections, optional, that the buyer pays for. Investors, lead paint inspections mandatory now by law, that if your investor purchases a property, before they can put a tenant in, they have to have a lead inspection done, and that has to be provided to the township. Some townships like Hamilton, if they don't get it after they see title changes, they'll start to fine like $1,000 like a month until they get a copy of it. So that's just stuff to check in terms of that kind of things, especially working with investors, because you don't have to do it on the resale side, but it may be an additional cost on the rental side. So when you're negotiating your contracts, you may want to work that in. Hey, like, we want you to do this ahead of time so that we're not eating this cost after the fact. So just check that stuff as well. So again, everything else pretty standard, accurate, disclosing inclusions, exclusions. So this is another trick too I use sometimes, and it's not really nice of me, but I do it anyway, especially if I represent the buyer. I really don't care what's in the MLS that they have for an inclusion or an exclusion. If my clients are offering like a full price offer, or they're offering over asking and the exclusion is the washer and dryer, I'm still putting it in inclusions for my clients. Let the listing agent catch it. Okay, because it's a negotiating point. The MLS is just information, it's not legally binding in any way. Same thing too, if you guys are working with clients, say an older couple, and the house that they're trying to purchase has a, playground in the backyard, you could put the playground in exclusions, that now it's the seller's responsibility to remove it. If the seller doesn't read this section, or the listing agent doesn't read this section, and they sign off on everything, and you get out of return review, they're legally liable to get rid of it, or give a credit for it to be removed. So don't just copy what's there, take a look to see. Also, when you're walking through the home, take down notes as to what's there. So like I got burned on this once, way back when I first started. I just assumed if a mirror was in a bathroom, the mirror was staying. Half bath downstairs, the mirror was hanging on a hook. It's not a permanent structure. They took the mirror. I didn't know the mirror was gone until we did the final walkthrough with my buyer, and all the mirrors that weren't screwed into the wall, they took. And the way they took it, you could see where the mirror was because the home was so old, like the paint and everything was like done around it. So it's not like you could even like hide it. Like you had to get the same mirror or repaint the room because they took everything that was hanging. So same thing too, if your clients are walking through chandeliers, window treatments, anything they might want that's justifying the price, or if they're putting a full price offer, take notes while you're in the showing, add that into your inclusions. It's also becoming very common, at least around me in the areas I've been working in, new construction. You know, when you buy the new construction, it's all the globe fixtures. People put in the nice fixtures. They put the globe fixtures and everything back up that they keep from the new construction when they go to sell. And they're taking their nice fixtures with them. But they're not disclosing that until after they get the contract. And now you go for your walkthroughs and they put it up, because technically it just has to have a fixture. It does not need to be the fixture that you saw, unless you're putting in here it's the fixture that you saw. So make sure you put that stuff in if you want to, chandeliers, all that kind of stuff, just to protect your client and be safe. So that's another tip and trick, just to make sure that you're covered. Again, so it says dates and times for performance, but that stuff changes. This is new. Buyer selects who the closing agent is. So if you guys have a specific attorney as a buyer's agent or a title company that you know you're going to use, that you like to use, put it in the contract up front, because that way the seller can't use them. Especially as you guys go to area to area, like Mercer County, there's like 5 good real estate attorneys. We all fight for them. So whoever puts it in this contract first ends up getting them, and then the seller has to go find somebody else. So this is a new thing that was added recently. So again, if you have somebody you like, put it in here ahead of time, have the conversation. If it doesn't matter to you, you can leave it blank. It's not mandatory. That's the other thing too. Every box in this contract of sale does not need to be filled in if it's not pertinent to the property. Don't feel like because you see a blank, you gotta fill the blank. Every blank, because it's a statewide contract, every blank may not be pertinent to the property specifically. So don't be overly concerned if you're like, oh, I don't know, or play it safe and mark no. Or mark not applicable or not, and then it's up to the seller to come back and say, hey, this is actually true, you need to change this. Now your buyer knows if they want to move ahead or not. Okay? So again, this is where I was talking about certificate of occupancy, blank, if left blank, then 1.5% of the purchase price would be the amount that they're responsible for. You could put any number in there. You don't have to leave the 1.5%. You could put 5%. You could put that they're responsible for up to $10,000. This will always be a negotiating point. This is the other thing too, especially because you guys will get listings in New Jersey. As you can see from what I'm already teaching you, we as agents like to be tricky. So as exciting as it is to get a contract or multiple contracts in a multi-bid situation, read every contract that comes over your desk before you present it to your seller, to make sure you understand what's in there and nobody pulled a Nick Lopez and tried to slip something that you're not paying attention to. And now next thing you know, you're 15 days from closing and that buyer's agent is like, oh, did you not read the contract? Like, you guys got to get rid of that. Like, you can't leave that. And then you're like stuck because it wasn't read. And don't trust that attorneys are going to read anything, because 99.9% of the time they don't. Okay, they just forward emails. So that's the other thing too, especially if you guys are working with an attorney. Be very careful what you put in writing, even to your own attorney. Be very careful what you put in writing and send them, because depending on the attorney, 9 out of 10 times, they're not rewording what you're saying to them, they're just forwarding your email. So don't send an email that's like, this junkie agent on the other side, like if I could hit him with a car and leave him there, I would. Could you take care of this? Because I can't have my phone up blow up anymore. And that attorney just forwards this the email to the other attorney and says, see below from my upset agent. And now you're like, come on, like, so just be careful when attorneys are involved, what you put in writing, what you put in text messages, better to pick, and this is the business we're in, better to pick up the phone and make a phone call and say, hey, what do I need to do to help get this over this hump? Than just shoot off an email because it's the quickest thing and get stuck with another issue down the road, okay? Again, also keep in mind what you guys are used to. Every page is either gonna have a signature, an initial, or both. So just make sure when you're rolling through your DocuSigns or whatever you guys are using, you're just making sure all that stuff is there. The worst thing is to get to a point where there's an argument between two sides and an attorney comes back and says, hey, this was actually null and void because you missed an initial. And now it's not binding. So just double and triple check to make sure it's done. I say it all the time. I mean, I've got my laptop, I got my big bag, all that kind of stuff. My phone is a Z Fold, so I can open it up and it's like a bigger screen for my old eyes. I still don't like doing any sort of emails or signatures on like a mobile screen. Like try to find a computer, because as much as they say it, everything is not mobile optimized to the point that you couldn't possibly put an initial somewhere wrong or forget to put it in. And again, if there's no problems, then you never have an issue. If there's a problem, some side will be nitpicking something, and most of the time, because we're the ones that work for free until that closing occurs, or you've taken a retainer, we're the first one people point fingers at that no, that wasn't on me, that was on my agent. So they love us when they love us, they hate us when they hate us. We just gotta try not to give them a reason to hate us whatsoever. So again, it talks about smoke certificates. Oh, this is new too, so you guys know. If you run into solar panels, I don't think there's a ton this way, but in New Jersey, solar panels is a big thing. So there's a new law in place that technically by law, the solar panels that go to like a secondary power source is supposed to be labeled by the seller so that if there's a fire or some sort of an issue, when they turn off the power, firefighters and police know they need to turn off the second one so nobody's going on a roof where there's still power going on and they're getting zapped like those little tennis racket bug zappers. So they actually put it in here, secondary power source identification label. It's the same for backup generators. So as you guys go into New Jersey, more like Hopewell, Pennington, like out to the mountains, like, you know, closer to the river, like Yardley, Newtown, that area, a lot of homes have a backup generator because of the snow and stuff. All those secondary power sources are now supposed to be labeled so people know how the energy is flowing and what boxes need to be turned off. Okay, so they put it in the contract so people know. Municipal assessments, this is one of the things, if you don't know, like if the seller hasn't told you that there's a municipal assessment, always mark has not been. Unless they've told you specifically, always mark has not been. Don't do research, don't go to like the clerk and try to look stuff up. Like let them tell you, because if they misrepresent, then it gives your buyer the ability to go back to them for some sort of a credit or something like that down the road, because they didn't tell you that there was a municipal assessment for the sidewalks outside and your taxes went up by X for a certain amount of time, okay? How comfortable are you guys dealing with HOAs? A little bit, condo associations. So Mercer County in general, so we did have a lot of stucco in some places. So if you know, like Route 1 and the by Market Fair Mall, which is where my office is at, there's a street Sayre Drive. It's the Sayre community. That whole community was stucco done wrong. It's been like a 10-year lawsuit. Their HOA fees have a special assessment of like an extra $150 a month to pay for the attorney that they've had on retainer for like a decade. So also to double check that the MLS is supposed to, an agent is supposed to put the right information in the MLS, but if you know there's an HOA or a condo, double check that stuff, especially double check the move-in fee, the capital contribution fee. A lot of the times listing agents forget to put that in the MLS. You think it's only like $200 a month because they're covering like the common area. You don't know there's a $5,000 move-in fee that your buyer gets slammed with and you're at the closing table and they're looking to find why is this now an additional $5,000 in terms of them having to bring money to the table. So just double check the HOAs and the condos to see what those fees are, because there is a separate addenda, the HOA condo addenda for this contract of sale. A listing agent should be filling out. 9 out of 10 times they don't. You fill it out as the buyer's agent and they have to make corrections. Okay, so just double check that stuff to make sure they're covered. So quality and surety of title is common, possession and occupancy, again, there could be tenants involved. Probably no different than here, but so you guys know, tenants follow the home, you can't evict somebody because somebody wants to buy a rental property as a primary home, however long that lease is. That's how long you have to hold it for, so again, be careful if it looks like they're tenants in the property, because if your first-time home buyer is getting a conventional loan, and that lease is going for another 9 months, now they're gonna have to get a different loan product, because that bank is not going to approve them not moving into the home within like 60 to 90 days at the most. Okay, so that's something too, that as another tip or trick, if you have somebody looking to buy an investment property as a primary home, and you get a contract accepted, you can tell your attorney in attorney review, put in the attorney review letter that we will not be closing until that landlord has evicted those people. Like, you wanna take the property vacant. So then the closing date, maybe a 30-day close, could take 6 months, but at least you've locked your clients into the property. They now can purchase this property. It's not their responsibility to become a landlord. If they can't get them out, then they can walk away, no harm, no foul. So that's another like tip or trick that attorney review sometimes helps with, that you could slide stuff in. Lead-based paint, if it's applicable or not, inspections. So inspections in general, you can see where they have the blanks. A lot of the New Jersey contracts are, if it's left blank, it tells you the days. The only thing I would say is when you're lining this up, what I like to do is, again, I usually do 14 days for my inspection window. I try to line up all the inspections for the same 14 days. So just read the blanks and whatever it says there, unless it's the seller has to respond to in a certain amount of time, and I leave that at the lower number of days, I will bump out the inspections to 14. Keep in mind, if possible, and you can negotiate it, if you're writing a contract around Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, try to bump those inspections out. Because the other thing you need to be careful of with the New Jersey contract of sale, some stuff is business days, some stuff is calendar days. Inspections are calendar. So it's counting weekends. So again, let's say you get out of attorney review on a Friday, your day one for your 14-day inspection window starts on Saturday. Most inspectors in the area, at least in Mercer County, they're looking at a 5-day turnaround just to get out to the property. So the other tip and trick I usually do for like my buyers, I tell them to schedule their inspection while we're in attorney review. We can always move the inspection date. But if attorney review takes 3 weeks, we'll move the date, but at least if they're calling on day one of attorney review, I got a shot that as soon as we're out of attorney review, we might get the inspection done on like day 2 or 3 after attorney review. They can schedule, you just can't schedule it for during attorney review. So I would tell my buyer, call the inspector, here's 3 people, try to get it for next week. Because I'm going to do the best I can, because our contract is accepted on Tuesday, for us to be out of attorney review by Friday. So any inspection Monday on of the following week is going to be good to go. And then we can always move it if we have to. So you're looking at that. So opponent system, cesspool requirements, none of these are usually ever there anymore. If they are, walk away. If you see it, they're supposed to disclose it. You don't want to deal with those systems. These systems are different than a septic system though. So in New Jersey, we have a separate addenda for a septic system. It's not like the agreement of sale where we can initial left or right what we want to do and what we don't want to do. What's within the contract of sale just covers a generic home inspection. We have separate addendas for septic and pool. Okay? And that's all on the back end. So you'll be able to click a box to see exactly what the addendas are and pick which ones you want to use. Where do you guys usually fill out your forms? You do zip forms, you do through DocuSign, zip forms. So zip forms is nice, especially with, and I fill all my stuff out in zip forms and I just pull it over to DocuSign to send out for signatures. Zip forms is nice for the New Jersey contract of sale because since we have like 11 addendas, the minute you click the box in the contract of sale, it will automatically pull that addenda over into your folder so that you can now fill out the addenda next. You don't have to go when you're in zip forms to find it and find the right one. When you click the box, it will add it automatically to your document, so you're good to go. So your inspection clause, again, what the responsibilities are, radon. How familiar are you guys with radon? A little bit? So depending on the area you go to, like Hopewell, Pennington, big radon. Heading up towards Lambertville, big radon. Anywhere you're really near like the mountains, usually higher radon. So when you guys are doing your showings too, look for the pipe. Because depending on where you're looking, most of them already have the radon remediation in place. Does not mean it's working, so you still want to get the test done. Most inspectors now, at least in like central Jersey area, are all using the electronic ones. So after it does the certain number of tests it's supposed to, it kicks off, so you don't have the potential of like oversaturating the charcoal tin and it coming back cockeyed. But you still want to get it done, even if it's on a slab. Some of Hamilton, a lot of Hamilton homes are on slabs. You can still have radon depending on where it's at. So the radon, the wood destroying insects, the regular home inspection, at least for the inspectors I use in Central Jersey, it's all packaged. They do all three no matter what. It's pretty much mandatory. And then you can add on stuff. The other thing you guys should watch out for in New Jersey and especially Central Jersey, again, using Hamilton Township where I live as an example, as part of the CO now, a level 2 fireplace inspection, a level 2 cert is mandatory now by the township for their CO. So somebody has to do it, whether it's the buyer or the seller, somebody's gonna have to get the fireplace inspected. So keep that in mind if you're negotiating contracts where your buyer is giving up home inspections. Again, double check what the township is looking for because they may now be paying extra for a fireplace inspection, whether they use the fireplace or not. Hopewell Township in Pennington, septic inspections are mandatory to get the CO because those inspections have to be provided to the health department. So same thing, if your buyer is giving up home inspection rights, double check what's mandatory because they may have to get a septic inspection done whether they're making requests or not, because they won't get the CO unless they turn that report over to the township and the health department signs off. Health department can come back and say this failed, you need to put in a septic system before we're gonna allow title to transfer. So again, double check that stuff and double check that stuff if you're on the listing side. You don't wanna go in doing your seller net sheet. You put in there, this is all you're gonna have to worry about, like the transfer tax. Next thing you know, they have a failed septic system that they didn't tell you about and they're putting $30,000 out to do that septic inspection because the township won't allow title to transfer until it's done. So just double check those numbers to make sure you know what's going on so you're not costing your clients more or they're trying to come after your commission. It also helps to have all this knowledge, because again, what I've been pushing to my agents, value proposition. If your value proposition is there as to the knowledge you have and what you're doing, it's very hard for them to argue that you shouldn't get paid 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. If you walk in there and they're asking you questions and you don't have the answers, you don't have to have every answer, but you don't have any answers, real easy for them to say, hey, well then you're a 1% agent. If I gotta do most of this work myself, or you're not really helping me, or you don't have the answers, that's how they undercut you when it comes to it. So have that strong value proposition. And this is what I tell a lot of my agents in general, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard it here. You're not agents, you're consultants. It's no different than a financial consultant. It's no different than a legal advisor. It's no different than an advisor when it comes to healthcare. You guys go through a ton of schooling. You do CE. You just did it. Okay, for those of you that are in this room, obviously, like you're doing it in 2 states. If you're like me and you're not smart enough to do the classes that double up for both, you're actually doing 2 states worth of classes on a regular basis for CE. You are more educated than most people out there. You deserve to be paid accordingly for it. Again, no different than a financial advisor or the attorney themselves. So go in there with that value proposition. They can't argue, especially if you review stuff like this with them ahead of time to say, hey, this is what you're going to have to deal with. So let's mitigate these problems now so that when that contract comes, it's as smooth as melted butter. Right? So again, infestation, woodborne insects, buyer's right through inspections, responsibility to cure, all standard stuff. Flood risk and flood hazard area. So Bright MLS will bring up the flood map so you can see it as to if they're in a flood zone or not. You have per the contract 10 days that it can be canceled by the buyer if it's found to be in a flood zone. I never trust Bright MLS and like FEMA in general because it's always changing. I do trust insurance companies. So as soon, because they're all in the same system. So as soon as they get accepted on a contract and you go into attorney review, I tell my clients, call your insurance company. You want a homeowner's quote and you want them to tell you if there have been any dings on this house. Has anybody claimed anything on this house so you know if you're going to have a higher insurance policy, or is it in a flood area? Doesn't matter if it's Geico, New Jersey manufacturers, any insurance company out there, they all use the same system. So whoever you're calling will be able to tell you if it's in a flood zone, you need flood insurance or not. They'll be able to tell you if anybody's placed any claims against the property that could increase your insurance. A trick when it comes to buyers, and I tell my buyers this, and it's actually a gift I usually give them, and what I tell my sellers. So home insurance, if you file a claim, puts a ding on the property and the address. Home warranties do not. So if you get a 210 home warranty for your seller, you get that's covering the listing and rolls over to the buyer. You get a 210 home warranty that you're giving to your buyer as a closing gift, and they're rolling with it. They put a claim against that. Doesn't stick to the property, insurance companies don't know. They put a claim through their insurance company, sticks with the property, and eventually they may become uninsurable, or you can't get insurance on the house. So that's something to let people know, because some people, I got a landlord right now who didn't want to listen to me. He wanted to put everything on his home insurance, got uninsurable, didn't tell anybody he didn't get insurance, place flooded, now it's just a mess. But if he had used the home warranty for those things, would have never popped up, his insurance would have been fine. It's also a nice trick if you guys, so I like to use 210 home warranty because I fell in love with them when I was doing new construction way back in the day. 210 will tell you if your clients use it or not. So I got a touch through 210 that they let me know that clients of mine that I put in Newtown used the policy that I gave them, saved $330 because their heat pump went and they needed to fix the AC. The minute I got that email, I now know that I have a touch to reach out to them and stay top of mind. Hey, I saw you use the policy, I got you, I just want to check in. Is there anything else going on in the house that I can help you with? Though I'm already talking to them, it's a nice way to give you that little, like, go out there and touch them outside of like, here's like a pumpkin cupcake recipe, or whatever else we usually like to do, red wine, white wine, stains, all that kind of stuff. So check that. Water quality. Oh, let's go flood. Qualifications of inspectors. So the only other thing that you need to worry about, not worry about, but you need to be aware of in New Jersey, any inspector coming in is supposed to be a licensed and qualified inspector and registered with the state of New Jersey. I never have any issues if someone's got a cousin who's a handyman who wants to come in and give them an idea. But the handyman cousin coming in cannot write up a report that you can use for inspection requests if they're not certified within the state of New Jersey. If you're unsure as a listing agent, you can go to the state website and you can look up all the inspectors before you allow them to come in to make sure that they're qualified and certified with the state. Because again, if they're not, they may not have insurance, they do something to the house, it's a whole thing. Okay? Water quality, if it's public water, a test does not need to get done by the seller at the time of transfer. Once a year, the water company is supposed to provide that report either digitally or in person for them to look at. If there's any sort of a well, the seller is supposed to test that well before transfer. The hiccup that you need to be aware of and pay attention to is it only has to be tested if it's the potable water source. So potable water meaning that they're using it to shower, they're using it to drink, they're using it to like wash their clothes where it's touching their skin and they can absorb it. If they have an old well on the property that is only going to the hose bibs that they're using to garden the lawn, does not need to be tested. So if the house that the drinking water is at is public, does not need to be tested. Keep in mind again, wherever the property is located, just if it's public water, does not mean it might not have a water filtration system or hard water where there's going to be some sort of system in the basement that's going to have to be maintained. That's not just for well water, it could be for public water as well. So don't be surprised if you're showing a property in some areas and you see the tanks and everything downstairs for the salt and all that, and you're looking at your MLS, you'd be like, it says public. I don't understand why this is here. Is there a well? A lot of hard water in New Jersey, so you see that more and more. Megan's Law, you guys know about Megan's Law, same thing. You know, you can't disclose anything even if you know. Tell them to call the clerk. Same with the offsite conditions, call the clerk, go to the state trooper website. It has in here in New Jersey, the air safety and zoning notice. It gives you the municipality and the airport that technically is there. I also like to let all my clients know, because again, I live in Hamilton. We have a baby airport in Robbinsville. Just because it's in Robbinsville, planes still fly over my house. So if it's an issue, when they get to the house and they're in the yard, tell them to look up. Let them see if they got a problem with what's coming or not, because just again, because an airport's 2 towns over, does not mean it's not flying over your house and you're not gonna see it. Okay, I'm not talking about drones or any of that kind of stuff, but the actual airplane's coming, so let them know what's going on. But it is technically here, so they can say they don't know. Bulk sales will really only be pertinent if it's like an investment property. See again here, a seller is supposed to let a buyer know if there's gonna be an issue with insurance, but again, fiduciary responsibility to my buyer, I don't trust the sellers. I may trust the listing agent, but I'm not gonna trust the sellers, because this is a buyer, I wanna become my seller down the road and refer me, so I'm gonna do everything in my power to protect them. So that would be call the insurance company as soon as you get an attorney review, might as well get the quote now, so you have time to shop around until, 10 days before closing, and suddenly you're told you need to provide a receipt, and you're like, what am I gonna do? And now you're stuck, because that falls into your escrows anyway, so you're gonna wanna know what your payment amount is. Initial and final walkthroughs, same thing. This is something that's coming up more and more, which I've been letting my agents know, especially if there's a multi-bid situation and they're giving up home inspections, or the home inspections are for information only. Your initial and final walkthrough is not an opportunity for you to bring another inspector through. Your initial walkthrough is the ability for you to walk through with your clients, so you can see if any repairs were done, or somebody in a rage because the armoire fell apart from IKEA while they were trying to move it, put something through a wall, and now you got a big hole in the sheetrock. That's something you can say about. It's not an opportunity for you to go back through and run all the water again and double it and say, oh, well, this, that, whatever, because you were trying to negotiate something during inspections. They said no, and now you think this is a second and third shot. You try to negotiate the same thing they said no to during your initial inspection negotiations. Again, just an opportunity to walk through and see if anything has changed from the inspection and from when you put the offer in. And again, the final walkthrough just to make sure they have all of their stuff out and there's nothing left there. So again, the way the closings work, same as most of the time. I do a lot of stuff for New Jersey Realtors, and I'm part of the Leadership Academy, and the lady running it is from Ohio. And we were talking about like how it works there, that in Ohio, there's automatic days worked in that when you close, the seller can stay before they have to move out. And I'm like, that's not how, like, your stuff is out, or I'm selling it at the Columbus Farmers Market, because like this key is being taken as soon as we're done. So just double check to make sure everything is out, have the attorney ready to go. Don't be afraid to take pictures when you're at a walkthrough to send if you need to delay the closing if something has to be negotiated, because again, after the fact, it's theirs. Okay, you don't want to say, well, don't worry about it, let's just sign the paperwork, get the keys, come back when you're done, and we can talk to them tomorrow. Once they sign it, they're out, but that's that. Failure of buyer, seller close, same thing, and then again, goes over the CIS, who's representing who, and then here, the listing and participating broker. So down here, this is the hiccup a lot of people get stuck in. So in the contract of sale now, because of what's occurred with buyer's agency, New Jersey has a co-op compensation form now. You need to make sure you're filling out that co-op compensation form, because the co-op compensation form is the only thing that lets title and mortgage and us as agents know if the number you're putting here from seller is really coming directly from the seller or it's coming from the co-op compensation. Because you could add more on. So let's just say, for example, you guys come to my listing and my co-op compensation is 1%. But you have a 2% minimum on your buyer's agency agreement, and in the buyer's agency agreement, you marked that the buyer wants you to try to negotiate the difference in the contract of sales so they don't have to pay anything. You would put 2% here from seller. The co-op compensation form is what I take as the listing agent to show the seller 1% is coming from me as the listing agent. They're asking you for an additional 1% that you're going to have to pay out of your proceeds. There's no second box to break it down between like 1% co-op here, 1% to the other agent. Same thing too, if the buyer is going to pay the difference or the buyer is paying your whole commission, you would put it under from buyer. In a multi-bid situation, it's up to you if your clients have the money. Keep in mind, though there is co-op compensation, though the listing agent agreed to get paid something through the seller's proceeds, doesn't mean your buyer can't pay the listing agent's commission as a way to try to win the property and keep extra money in their client's pocket. That's another negotiating point or a tip or trick that you guys could try if you wanted to. Your buyer could say, listen, I want you to put in there that from buyer and the listing broker, we're gonna pay 1% of the listing broker's commission. So that way the seller keeps an additional 1% in their pocket, bumps up their proceeds. We may not be offering over asking, we may not even be offering asking, but because we're giving back the 1%, they're actually going to net more than if we offer over asking and they're paying a commission to their agent. So that's something you could do as well. That's why the boxes are there. This is the other thing, unfortunately, in New Jersey is one of the first things that attorneys always get rid of. Equitable lien, technically per the contract of sale, we have the right as agents that if they choose not to pay our commission, we can slap them with a lien. This is usually also one of the first things an attorney gets rid of. They put in there that this is no longer pertinent and we only get paid if the property closes. So if you see an attorney review letter that says they're deleting section 31, that's section 31 equitable lien. That's technically the teeth we have in New Jersey per the contract of sale to say, hey, you can close all you want, but this is the lien we're putting on you and you owe us money. They usually get rid of that. If you have no attorneys, this is your teeth. If a seller or a FSBO or somebody like that, someone decides they don't want to pay commissions, just like the buyer's agency has the lien in it that we're able to go after the buyer, plus attorney fees, if they don't pay us our commission, okay? So again, disclosure, we're supposed to disclose if anybody has a real estate license. We put in here that we want to get copies of the CD or the ALTA or the HUD or all that. Goes into attorney review, so that if there are no attorneys, everybody understands. This is the other thing too to be aware of in New Jersey and in general. Number 37, no assignment. This is what stops wholesaling legally in New Jersey. That you cannot come in and put an offer on a property as a buyer, and then suddenly decide you're going to assign your right to purchase in that property to somebody else without the seller's permission first. You are allowed to assign it to somebody else, but only if the seller gives permission first. Sometimes you see it happen if an investor comes in and it takes too long to close on an estate or a short sale or something like that, and they run out of the money because they've got multiple projects. You may see an investor assign their right with seller permission from one investor to another. But in general, this is what stops somebody from coming in and wholesaling and saying, I'm going to give Mr. and Mrs. Seller X. And then they go on like FSBO.com and they market the property for $10,000 more to try to close it at the same deal. They're legally not allowed to move their rights over to somebody else. They're also legally not allowed to market that they're purchasing the property or that they're going to sell it until they are the actual owner as well. Okay. Corporate resolutions, if it's a corporate thing, it's there. Again, everybody's liable, applicable laws, and then the addendas. You can see here multiple addendas, buyer's property sale contingency, that's if they gotta sell to buy. HOA, coronavirus is still there, so we have a separate FHA VA loan addenda. So within the FHA VA loan addenda is an appraisal contingency. If you do not have an FHA VA loan, there is no appraisal contingency automatically worked into this contract of sale. It's usually added during attorney review, but to cover yourself, you want to put it here in the number 43 for additional provisions. Remember, you can't practice law, so don't Google or have ChatGPT come up with the smartest, most legalese paragraph on appraisal contingency you can find. Just put generic language in here that if it doesn't meet the purchase price, that the buyer and the seller agree to renegotiate, or the buyer has the right to walk away and get all of their escrows back. Keep it short and sweet. What I used to do in cooking, we called it KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That's it. You overstir the sauce, it's gonna burn every time. So, but you need to make sure you're adding in an appraisal contingency because it's not automatically in here. The bank will still make them get an appraisal, but they won't have a right to renegotiate if it's not added in during attorney review, or you put it here. Yes?
So I just wanted to make sure, because a lot of FHA buyers do like the guaranteeing the appraisal.
Mhm.
So, and then it comes with that addendum that says that if it doesn't appraise, yada, yada. So if you put in that provision spot that they're leaving that, does that cover?
It would oversee it, yes. So you would also too, if you're using FHA VA and they want to like put a cushion in,
Yeah.
you would add that here because that's like, it's like an onion. So this is your core, That addendum is a layer on top of it. The additional provisions would be a layer on top of that, that you're saying that though it's an FHA, that either guaranteeing the difference, and here's proof of funds, or they're willing to make up a cushion of $5,000 or $10,000. That's the other thing too, keep in mind, if you guys are looking at your comps, don't always assume that you have to give up the appraisal contingency. Try to work a cushion in first. So say that the buyer is willing to purchase this property, if it under appraises, they're willing to pay $5,000 over the appraised value up to the contract price of X. So it's almost the same as an escalation clause. So this way you're not making them guarantee that there's a $20,000 difference. Maybe they're only paying 5 over the appraised value, 10 over the appraised value, but they're never gonna be higher than the contract price. When you look at the comps, you'll know if you're able to work that cushion in or not, or there may not be no appraisal issue whatsoever, so it's comfortable just to say, okay, no harm, no foul. So again, lead-based paint, new construction, private sewage disposal is your septic system. So if there's a septic system, the private sewage disposal addenda is the one you want to use. Private well testing, properties with 3 or more units, seller concessions, short sales, solar panels, swimming pools, underground fuel tanks. Be careful with the solar panels, because a lot of the times, a majority of solar panels now are not bought out. So there'll be an additional cost on your buyer where credit will be run. So you need to speak to the mortgage broker, the lender, to make sure that before they fill out the solar panel application, you know where they're at, because nobody's gonna be happy if they're right on the cusp. They fill out the application for the solar panels, they run their credit, and now they drop just below enough that not only are they not getting the solar panels, but they're losing the mortgage. It's like them pulling up in a new car, because they're like, oh, my lease is up tomorrow. Then you should have waited till tomorrow to go get that lease done, not 2 days ago, now you affected your credit. So same type of thing, be careful with the solar panels, because a lot of them now come with a cost of additional money per month on the property. And again, your additional contract provisions is the section where you can put everything to make sure you're covered. Wire fraud notice, again, everybody signs that. We know about wire fraud, that's a deal. So that's pretty much the contract to sale. That 2 minutes to spare. So fast. So just so you guys know, usually my classes at my market center, this contract to sale, because I go through the addendas, usually it's about an hour and a half class. Did you guys have any questions per se? Read this minutes, a lot to absorb.
I just want to make sure, so the, co-op compensation, that is mandatory for every file? Is that mandatory?
If there's co-op compensation, yes. Because it's that, so the co-op compensation form is the agreement between the two brokerages that say you go to closing and they choose not to give you a check. That's what your broker then has the ability to go to their broker to say, hey, this is what was filled out, you guys signed off on it, we signed off on it, like you owe us 2%.
Confusing, because it says it in the contract in that spot that it's coming from the seller.
So that's the difference. So co-op compensation is not coming from the seller. Co-op compensation is coming from your cooperating.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay, I understand.
Yeah, so if there's no cooperating compensation and it's coming from the seller, you don't need a form. That's 2%.
Got
You know, if you wanna try to hit them up for 5, you could put 5 there,
it, got
not a problem. But if it's coming between us as agents, that's why you need the co-op compensation form, just to show that like they're giving a portion of their paycheck to you. Otherwise, it's coming straight from the seller. Yeah, or straight from the buyer. The other thing too to be aware of, guys, is that right now, at least the last couple of files I've done, if your buyer is paying you a commission, mortgage companies and title are asking for your buyer's agency agreements to make sure that what you put on the contract and what you put on your commission bill is valid, and they're asking for it as part of the mortgage commitment process, because that's an additional closing cost to the buyer that has to go into their ratio. So just make sure you have your paperwork. Do not be surprised if a lender reaches out to you, say, this is great, like, send me your buyer's agency form so that we can see that what you put on here is valid.
Alright.